We probably started a couple years ago, just an initial planning stage when they talked about Emlen Tunnell and starting to think about doing something for him. And it started as a concept of doing some type of statue, and it just evolved from there. And it's amazing how, just from the thought process, they're actually here today with the dedication of the actual statue.
The statue was arranged for, paid for by the Delaware County Sports Museum, which is housed in the township building. And we're celebrating a local hero. Not only was he a football star and an athlete, he was also a hero when he was in the military, saved lives. So that's what this is all about.
Well, the Coast Guard's here to celebrate a hero, Mr. Emlen Tunnell, who was a steward's mate first class in the United States Coast Guard from 1943 to 1946. In so doing, part of that was he saved 2 lives while he was a member of the U.S. Coast Guard, once in combat and once on his way home on the Coast Guard cutter Tampa in Newfoundland in 1946. We in the Coast Guard generally, are part of the community that we serve in. So, in general, when a community comes together and wants to honor one of their own, and we have a part to play in it, we certainly will.
We're representing Emlen Tunnell. He was a Coastie that has been inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame, first African American who's been inducted into the Hall of Fame, and is regarded as the best safety of all time. So we felt honored that he was a part of our service, and we wanted to represent his name as well as the Coast Guard's name in this special event.
Well, it's the unveiling of the statue of Emlen Tunnell. Even a lot of sports fans have never even heard of him and the accomplishments that he's done on the football field and in the Coast Guard during the war. He saved a couple of people's lives, and we just thought it was a good thing to do, to come out here and get the statue itself going and let people know who he was, because he was so unknown. Everybody's heard of Bill Russell, Jackie Robinson, and everything, and the achievements they had in the sports world. And Emlen Tunnell had some great achievements also, but he was virtually unknown, and this publicity for him is great.
The guy's a hero. He's a legend, and it's more than just sports. Being a war hero, being what he stood for. The guy is just an amazing person. His story, when you read his story, how humble he was and how hard he worked, it shows what work ethic's about, that through hard work, through effort, through dedication, you can be successful, and all the barriers that he broke. It's an incredible story, and it's something that we're very proud of as a community. And to recognize him, it's truly an honor.
Well, I think, we're fortunate in Radnor to have many heroes, past heroes and present heroes. And one of the things that we do, I think, a really good job of in Radnor is recognizing and honoring people for their contributions, whether it's in the township or outside the township. I think that's important. I think it's an important thing to recognize. I think it's an important thing for the people currently living here to know and understand the deep history that we have here in Radnor, and the amazing people that have been in our township and continue to be in our township.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Radnor Township and this great day here of recognizing one of the township's true heroes and legends. I want to start out by thanking our community for coming together in this long overdue recognition of a hero and a legend in Emlen Tunnell. I'd like to also thank our Radnor Township Board of Commissioners for allowing this statue to be placed here in front of the town hall for eternity, here for everyone to enjoy and to see and to visit 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. At this time, I'd ask everyone to rise while the United States Coast Guard Honor Guard presents our colors.
Left, right. but the company.
Oh, say, can you sing by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red clear, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land and of the free and the home of the
Good afternoon, family, friends, community leaders, and distinguished guests. Let us bow our heads in prayer as we gather in unity this day to celebrate great man, Mr. Emlen Tunnell. Let us just thank God for this day, for he has made, we shall rejoice and be glad in it. We thank you, God, for the gifts, talents, and legacy of Mr. Tunnell. We thank you, God, for his excellent service in the Coast Guard during World War II. We thank you, God, for this trailblazer from Garrett Hill who graduated from Radnor High School and was the first African-American inducted into the Football Hall of Fame, the Professional Hall of Fame in 1967. God, we thank you for every generation, race, and socioeconomic background assembled here today in unity. May God bless America. Amen.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Radnor Township Board of Commissioners, I would like to welcome you and thank you for sharing this exciting day. We are so fortunate in Radnor to have so many heroes from our past and so many in our present and so many future heroes in the making. We find them on the walls of Radnor High School. We have them memorialized in our public spaces, honored for their selflessness and dedication. We find them in our present, making a difference in the lives of our township residents. Today, however, belongs to a man who paved the way for other future heroes and left a lasting impact on not only his community in Radnor and Garrett Hill, but on a national level as well. Today belongs to Emlen Tunnell and all those who helped make this day a reality. I offer congratulations to all who have worked so hard to make sure another one of Radnor's heroes received the honors due to him. Thank you for bringing his story to life and for allowing that story to continue to inspire future generations of heroes. And may I add, as a proud alum of Radnor High School, that today I could not be more Radnor proud. Thank you.
It is truly an honor to be speaking here today on behalf of Radnor Township, Ward 7, and our beloved Garrett Hill, the neighborhood where Emlen Tunnell grew up. We finally get to immortalize this great man, a war hero who saved the lives of many on more than one occasion, a trailblazer and pioneer, and the first African American to be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. we get to honor him with a beautiful bronze statue to be cherished for generations to come. Garrett Hill's favorite son is also being memorialized by adding the name Emlen Tunnell Way under the Garrett Avenue street sign. And on that street, and on that street across from Emlen Tunnell's childhood house is a large park that also bears his name. And fortunately, this park now is getting some much needed amenities that will add to his legacy. At lunch earlier today, we were talking a little bit about Emlen Tunnell. And it's funny because every now and again, you'll hear people that talk to him, but that knew him, and they'll talk about him. And they'll say what a stand-up guy he was. And when a bunch of Eagles fans say that about a New York Giant, it speaks volumes. So to the many people that have made this celebration possible, thank you. And I know I wasn't supposed to thank you, but thank you, Bob Vankoski, our township manager, Tammy Cohen, who is the head of our community programming, as well as Steve McNellis, just to say a few from the people that work here at the Township Building. Also, a big thanks to the sports legends of Delaware County, Jim and Phil, wherever you are. Thank you very much for everything you've done. Your crew and your stewardship for this museum has truly made it a township treasure. So once again, thank you to everyone in sharing this joyous event for Garrett Hill's favorite son. Pride and joy, Emlen Tunnell. Thank you.
I am very proud to have represented for the past quarter of a century that section of Garrett Hill that has Tunnell Park, and also have had the pleasure as I door knock up and down Garrett Avenue to just have very nice conversations and interaction with his family. It's really been an honor, and the importance of doing this is that when I first started on this job, I had very little knowledge of the background of this great man, but because of all the great work of the people here today, bringing this great man's life into a greater public scrutiny, I think we all benefit from it. So thank you for making me part of it.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of myself, Representative Vitale, and the rest of the members of the State House of Pennsylvania, we're honored to be able to be here today to help recognize Emlen Tunnell and his accomplishments, not only as a member of our community locally, but as a member of our community in the state, and certainly as our nation. He's certainly somebody that we should all look up to, and our children should be proud to admire. So thank you all for bringing this to the forefront. Thank you for bringing his legacy to become a permanent part of our community, and hopefully he could become someone that our children look up to every day. Thank you.
Our Delaware County District Attorney, Kat Copeland.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here in the warmth of the sun as opposed to at least the pouring rain. And thank you for all coming out here today. I am so honored to have been asked to speak to you today. I actually played as a child in that very park that we're speaking about, enjoying the many times of running around that little merry-go-round. And as I stand here today thinking how incredible it is that we honor such an amazing man, that he sets forth a legacy for us all into the future. He doesn't just set forth a legacy of his own accomplishments, he sets forth a standard for our children to look up to know that you yourself have an opportunity in life, particularly here in Delaware County, to one day hopefully be a hero yourself. We have heroes who I see sitting here amongst us here today, and everyone who has dedicated themselves to a good cause, a cause which I see clearly, and the many people who I've spoken to today have shown us that. Mr. Tunnell has shown us that, and today we honor him and will forever honor him here in Radnor Township. Thank you.
On behalf of the Radnor Township School District, our Board of Directors, who some are here with us today, thank you for having us be part of this. Thank you for the Sports Hall of Fame for all that their work to recognize Mr. Tunnell. And it's also wonderful to see some of our football players and our coach here as well. So it's great to have all of you here. It was not long after I joined the district that I learned just how deep the affection and reverence for Mr. Tunnell is here in Radnor, and especially in Garrett Hill. Many would speak of Mr. Tunnell in awe, recounting his heroics both on the football field and as a member of the U.S. Coast Guard. The love for Mr. Tunnell
and the urgent need to properly recognize him for his contributions to our country was overwhelming. But it was only when I read Mr. Tunnell's 1966 memoir, Footsteps of a Giant, that I realized Mr. Tunnell had just as much love for Radnor. In 1942, a 1942 graduate of Radnor High School, who was inducted into our Hall of Fame, Mr. Tunnell devoted many passages in his book to his experiences at Radnor High School and throughout our community. In Chapter 3, which reads as an ode to Garrett Hill, he writes, "I'd enjoy showing you my little town, as it was when I was a kid, and as it pretty much is today, because it would tell you a lot about me. This is our first home in Garrett Hill. It doesn't look much now, and it didn't look much then, but we thought it was great." In his next chapter about the football program, he writes about his experiences joining the high school football team. As an African-American man coming of age in the 1940s, Mr. Tunnell certainly battled discrimination. He tackles that subject in parts of his book, but a passage in Chapter 4 suggests, at least in Radnor, Mr. Tunnell felt embraced. The ambition of every little kid in Garrett Hill was to play someday for the Radnor Raiders. We dreamed of the day when we'd all be playing together on varsity. What a difference there would have been in my life if Jules Prevost, the head coach, or the assistants had been guys with bitter souls who would have preferred to lose football games than to play a Negro kid. Jules put me on the first team in my freshman year. There are many lessons that we can learn from the life and accomplishments of Emlen Tunnell. But what can happen when educators provide support and opportunities for all our students is one of the most important lessons for us as a school district. Again, I thank you for having me here today. The scope and work and the passion that has gone into completing this well-deserved tribute to Emlen Tunnell is awe-inspiring and is a testament to a man's tremendous impact. It is safe to say that he was a giant in many ways to many of us. Thank you.
We're all here today kind of riding the coattails of Emlen Tunnell. The coattails are long, they're strong, and they're growing. There's a lot of momentum building about Emlen Tunnell. When we first started this project nearly 2 years ago, the usual response was, who? What? Never heard of him. When you told them who he was, they still didn't know who he was. We were puzzled by that. Well, it's been a process, and we're building now, we're getting there. But what it took was to do something monumental, and we created this 7-foot bronze statue, which is magnificent. I want to recognize Jennifer Frudakis-Petry, our sculptor. Jen, would you stand up? She's a hero. And since the New York Giants film crew's here and others, I'm going to leave with one challenge. We're doing a lot in Emlen's name, but I'm going to give you one last challenge. I want people to think about this. If you really study the man and understand who he was and all that he accomplished, he's an American hero. So my suggestion to the National Football League, to the owners, to the teams, to the Players Association, that we take a step back and say, you know what, maybe what we ought to do is retire the number 45 from pro football.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Right. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to invite everybody to visit our Sports Legends of Delaware County Museum. We're open from 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, 11 to 1:30 on Saturdays. We have Emlen Tunnell's silver life-saving medal on display, if you haven't seen that. And we also have his combat action ribbons on display. And we have some tremendous memorabilia from all the athletes from Delaware County. So please come out and visit us, especially on Saturday, because it gets lonely out here. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to admit that I'm not from Radnor. I'm not even from Delaware County, so I have that confession to make. So we'll get that out of the way. I also thought, growing up, that my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was the only place where sports heroes and legends ever came from. So, and I know I'm probably going to get the evil eye from a lot of folks on that. But for a Steelers fan to come out of a Steelers jersey and wear a New York Giants jersey and celebrate Emlen Tunnell, it's definitely something that's meaningful to me. So I just want to say that, after coming to Radnor Township back in '99 and learning who Emlen Tunnell was for the first time in my lifetime, I unfortunately never had heard of him before. But when I came to Radnor and learned who he was and have heard the stories and talked with everyone who has celebrated him, it's just been remarkable what an individual he is. And it's so important that how legendary he is and the person he represented and how complete he was of a person, that his persona, that he lives on forever. And I think we're able to accomplish that with this statue here. So I want to take an opportunity and I want to commend the sports legends of Delaware County for taking the initiative to put Emlen on the map so everybody can know who he is for generations to come. We here at the township, we support your passion and we want to keep that persona of him alive so that everybody can know him across the nation and keep it as a mission that keeps going. So I commend you for your passion and your dedication. I also want to take the opportunity while I have the floor here, and I want to thank everybody who's been involved with the project, not only everybody with the museum, but all of the community members who have stepped up and have helped us spread the word about Emlen to make sure that his memory lives on. I also want to thank Mayfield Gardens, who made this plaza look absolutely amazing. I think Harry's here today, so we want to thank him and all of his folks. They really did an outstanding job, and of course under the direction and leadership with our Public Works Department, Steve McNellis, who's over here, we want to thank them and thank all their staff for everything that they've done to make this happen. Our Township Manager, Bob Zankowski, of course our Board of Commissioners here that are behind me, and I just want to say how thankful that I am. I don't want to forget Steve Berman. I think he's here too. He keeps the Sports Legends of Delaware County going and their energy and their passion so they can do what they do. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here and be part of this history with all of you today.
I am honored to even have a chance to say a few words about a gentleman of character, academic, heroic, athletic abilities that Emlen Tunnell possessed while he was with us. Now that he has passed on and we have this today, I've got a lot of video that I'm going to show in Wisconsin, where I spent 6 months, California, I spend the other 6, but I'm going to take this to all the different high schools and with a lot of coaches that I know and have them present what Billy White Shoes Johnson talked about, and other people here who have made some comments about Emlen Tunnell, and pass it on to the future generations. Because what better example could we have for the future than what Emlen Tunnell has represented? So I probably won't be here when the cover comes off, because like you said, I have to catch a plane. But my wife and I, who's back, Kelly, you want to stand up? Kelly and I have been very much involved with this. And, through that whole program today, nobody said this, and I don't know if anybody will today, so I'm going to get it in. I've known Jim Vankoski all my life, pretty much. And the effort and the work, as well as the other people, I'm not denying anybody else. And you all know who you are. But nobody said anything about Van yet. So how about a round of applause and a good hand for Jim Vankoski, who put all this together. And no, we're not represented by the same agent, so that's not why I had to say something nice. But enjoy the rest of the day. Again, honored to be here, and hopefully we'll be coming back to the county someday down the road, and somebody else will be having this done for them. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.
A gentleman that I met 8 years ago when I started here, and a pretty remarkable person who keeps the memories of our veterans alive every day of the year. He's somebody that he dedicates his life now to the veterans. He brought to me the book about Emlen Tunnell, and as Tammy had mentioned, I knew nothing about the gentleman. But after I got done reading this book, I have no idea how there's not a movie about this individual, how every school does not read about him, how he is not a legend around this country, about who he is, about what he has done. And Marty Costello deserves more and more credit for what he does for the veterans of not only Radnor Township, of keeping their memories alive, than what he does for veterans everywhere. So it's an honor every time I get to introduce Marty Costello.
For God and country. I was listening to Billy White's Hugh Johnson's today, first time I've ever met the gentleman, but it reminded me, and I got the book here, Footsteps of a Giant, which Mr. Sorensen, over there taking a picture of me, gave to me years ago, thinking I'm Emlen Tunnell's greatest fan. Well, I grew up on Garrett Avenue, about 7 houses away from Emlen Tunnell and Emlen Tunnell's family. Emlen and my father had a lot in common. Both World War II veterans, yes. But my father was an orphan, and Emlen's dad took off when he was a kid. So guess where my dad spent most of his time? Because Emlen still had a mom, Catherine, who Emlen loved deeply, and so did my father. But with that in mind, Emlen played football for Radnor High School, the Red Raiders, as you heard, and in his senior year, during a game with Ridley Township, he was clipped, and his knee went out. And he hobbled around for about 2 weeks before, we better go see a doctor. So he went to 3 different hospitals, and they finally ended up putting a full cast on his leg. And he knew there was something wrong, more than just keeping the leg stable. So he went to a place that he spent most of his life, which was only a couple of blocks away from his house, Villanova University football field. He was there every day, either running around the track or watching the team practice. And according to Mr. Vince McNally, who a lot of you football people recognize, he was an assistant coach at Villanova University and then later became the general manager for the Philadelphia Eagles. He helped Emlen quite a bit. But he hobbled into the training room at Villanova. And a lot of people don't know this, but Jumbo Jim Elliott was a trainer and the coach of the Villanova track team. So they're looking at him, and Paul Stern and Sal Rosado were also in the training room that day, 2 of Emlen's heroes who played on the Villanova football team. So the 2 lineman picked Emlen up, who was 185 pounds, but a midget compared to these guys. And Jumbo Elliott cut the cast off and put him in the whirlpool. And Emlen in his book says, I never thought I would ever be in a contraption like this, a machine. His leg was starting to feel better as the warm water swooshed around. And after a little bit of time, Sal, the biggest guy, is holding his arms next to his chest and his back to the tank. He didn't know what was going to happen. So anybody who ever met Jumbo Elliott, his hands were about this big, and he was a big man. He put his hands in the water, looked straight in Emlen's eyes, boom. And Emlen said, pow. If the window was opened, my brother could have heard that pow 4 blocks away on Garrett Avenue, and his yell. But this leg started to feel better. And according to Emlen, Jumbo Elliott said, now we can't have a future Hall of Famer hobbling around on one leg, can we? So, as time went by, obviously his knee healed. And he talked about Vince McNally, he talked about Jumbo Elliott and the other guys on the Villanova football team with great respect. With great respect. And then, as you know, he did all the great things as a New York Giant, became a coach, became a scout, a coach, etc. But this is what he learned from that experience. Emlen's words. That's why when I'm watching the rookies in camp or scouting college players. I don't identify, parentheses, now there's a said word with a Negro boy. I remember what those 4 white men at Villanova, those 4 white guys did for me. And I identify now with football players. Emlen Tunnell. Now, when I used to make sure you say hello to Mr. Tunnell, I really didn't know who he was. But after he died in 1975, my father cried for 3 days. And he worked behind the counter at a hoagie shop, which I now run. And as I hear these words spoken about this true American hero, I now know why. God bless you. God bless the United States.
I'm Lou Gaskins. I was born in Garrett Hill. Grew up with Emlen and his family. I'm here today representing actually Club 50, who help college students all over. But if you see anybody wearing what I'm wearing, just ask them what we do. We help out the students and a lot more. Emlen taught me how to catch a football. And today, they don't call it today, but he taught me how to do the button hook. Is that right, Mr. Lyons? What they call the button hook today, to get away from your defender, which was you were running down the field on the right side, and before your defender knew it, you were on the left side by making one step. Easy. I don't see them even making their pros today. But Emlen would come home from college and take the kids over to the old field and teach them how to play football. And after we grew up at all, Emlen, when he ended his career, he went to work for Miller's Highlight. And my wife and I had gotten married a few years, and we went to Garrett Hill, and Emlen caught us. And that was it. He took us in to have a cool one at Donahoo's. but he was a great guy. I loved him. And that's my experience with Emlen Tunnell. Thank you.
We have 2 of Emlen's nephews here, and I'd like to know if you'd both like to say a few words.
Back in the 1970s, when we were coming up in school at Wissahick in Ambler, I would always wonder, when's Emlen coming around? In 1965, he was given limousine service from the Giants. So all we do, we'd look out the window and we'd see a big limousine coming up the street. And he'd get out, larger than life. And that was such an impression on us at that time, that it was just phenomenal. Thank you.
It's so great to hear the name Tunnell instead of Tunnel. I really appreciate that. I'll say Uncle Emlen because he's my uncle. A lot of people really don't know him. And when I tell them about his accomplishments in the NFL, they really don't believe it. In 1952, still today, he's the only NFL player ever to achieve this. And as far as interception yardage, interceptions, kickoff, and punt return yardage, he kind of combined them all together. He had more yards than the leading rusher. No one has ever done that except for him. In 110 games, he had 74 interceptions. It's never been done before. He was just a regular human being to me. I mean, I'm sitting here at all with all of this. You know, he's just a person to me. You know, it's my dad's brother. You know, Uncle Emlen. You know, okay, he played football, so what? You know, no, that's just how it was. You know, but he was a great man. I'll never forget. Deion Sanders and Ronnie Lott said, "If it wasn't for Emlen Tunnell, we would never be great." Thank you.
Emlen Tunnell, certainly part of my life, came in almost accidentally 10 years ago. And, you know, doing my research in his life and understanding a lot about his Coast Guard world of work, which frankly was lost, you know, just because it was the time. It's amazing to see that someone like him that espoused what we call the guardian ethos and honor, respect, and devotion to duty would be someone that, you know, in many respects was overlooked. But after reading his autobiography, I kind of understood, because in many respects he was understated about everything he ever did. You know, when it came down to it, you know, he didn't see himself as anyone different than anyone else. And frankly, now we have the opportunity to correct some of that. So I am very thankful and very honored to be here and be a part of that as we, you know, do the unveiling a little later. And it's just an amazing event for me, and I'm glad to see Catherine again after 7 years. It's great to see you again. And it's just, you know, like I said, it's special. You know, I feel like he's a part of my family. And, you know, I certainly have him as part of my life now. So once again, thank you all, to all out there. Semper Paratus and Godspeed. Thank you.
Ted Cottrell from former NFL Commissioner's Office and Delaware County native.
I don't have much to say because everything's been said. But I'm originally from Chester, and when we come out talk about Radnor, back in the late 50s, early 60s, basketball was the big thing, and so I go on and start coaching. I coached at Rutgers for 9 years. Then I went on coaching the NFL for 28 years. But my first couple of years at Rutgers, we had gone to the Giants practices when Emlen was coaching the DBs. And I heard a little bit about him. I said, well, who's that brother out there? Because there wasn't that many blacks coaching in the NFL. I said, who's that brother over there? I said, Emlen Tunnell. So I said, yeah, I heard about that guy. Seeing some of those old tapes of him, like in the game against the Colts in Yankee Stadium for the championship game, where they said it was to be one of the greatest games ever. Emlen Tunnell names was mentioned. Rosie Greer, Roosevelt Brown, Frank Gifford, all these guys, Charlie Connerly. And I was going, damn, that's the guy right there in that game. Go on, and God has it this way. Our God is tremendous. I coach with the Buffalo Bills, and one of the guys I'm coaching with, his name is Elijah Pitts. Elijah Pitts played for the Green Bay Packers. Elijah Pitts scored the first rushing touchdown in the very first Super Bowl. So he would talk about Emlen Tunnell to me. Talk about Emlen Tunnell. So lo and behold, when this project was getting going, Jimmy and Bo Ryan called me. They needed something from the commissioner's office, the NFL office. I had worked there for 6 years after coaching, doing the appeals hearings for the players when they get fined. I was Judge Ted. All right. And so, made a few calls. We got some things done. And one of the things, I was talking to one of the VPs there, and I said, we got this thing for Emlen Tunnell. And he goes, now guys, who's this Emlen Tunnell? I said, damn it, Google him. Right there. Google him. Damn, this guy's pretty damn good. Yes, he is pretty damn good. So as it rolled on, we got some stuff from the commissioner's office. They helped us with this project because Jimmy Vankoski, I don't know if he tells people, he's from Chester also. He was a pretty damn good baseball player. And Bo Ryan, a lot of people didn't know this about Bo. Bo was he was a quarterback and I was a center. He had his hands under my butt for a long time. and then he got thrown off the team our senior year and we didn't win a game. So Bo was a quarterback. So Jimmy asked me to help with this. Things went along pretty good. And I was telling a couple of guys, I said, you know what? Some of the problems we're having in the NFL with the players, it's nothing new. It's been going on forever. That they spoke up. But what needs to be a big thing done about this is that this man is a great example of what is good about the NFL. It's very good. Served this country. Goes on. Plays in the league. Goes on. Coaches in the league. Impart all this knowledge. Damn it! He's an example for you knuckleheads trying to act up. Know this man. Know what he's about. You want an example? Look at this statue here. That's an example of how you should be.
The next person on our program, being a Cleveland Browns fan, and I know, don't laugh now, but still I remember watching this gentleman play and making me cry a lot of times too, watching these games. But it's an honor to introduce the next gentleman, former great NFL player. It's great to have him here today, Mr. Billy White Shoes Johnson.
They want me to do my dance. I'm going to get the oldest guy up here to do it. No, you sit down. I'm going to do it. Just for you guys. All right, here we go. See? And I didn't have to hold on to the stand. See that? Anyway, Ted, you got fired up. You must have been down to the Ward Grill. So, for those of you who know Chester, know what that is anyway. But look, I spoke earlier, and the biggest thing I want you guys to know is that this guy was the epitome of success. He knew what it was, he knew what it took, and he went out and did it. No complaints, very modest, good character, great integrity, and above all, knew who he was as a man. And when you get someone like that who can impart wisdom and go out and be able to work with everyone, not just with one part of the population, but cross the lines, cross barriers, cross ethnicity, cross nationalities and stuff, and yet was able to come from Garrett Avenue and ascend to the heights of a Hall of Famer. He knew what life was about. Of course, he was blessed and given the talent by God himself, but he knew that if he didn't have good work ethics, he wouldn't have ascended to become the player he was. I'm honest to goodnessly am overjoyed to be able to honor him, pay him homage, because he is one of the great American heroes. Thank you guys for coming out and taking part in this wonderful celebration.
It's a tremendous honor. I've been a sculptor for over 30 years. I've worked on a lot of projects, some as assistant, some as a principal artist, but this was an exceptional experience because, as I mentioned too, the people involved were so engaged and helped and wanted to contribute as much as possible to make this a real success. And it just was a wonderful man to get to know. I mean, incredible life that he lived, very inspired, and I think he did a lot of good in his lifetime. And I hope a piece like this can continue that memory, continue to inspire. It took over a year and a half for the entire process. I started. It took me over a year to do my part, which is the clay model and the enlargement and the work on the clay of the enlargement. And then the foundry, and that took me about a year, and then the foundry needed at least, 3 to 4 months to cast it in bronze. So I would work with them as well on the project as it went through various different stages of the process. I had a lot of good photographs I got offline of him in the 40s when he was playing for the Giants and late 40s. And this is the uniform, the vintage uniform from that time. They didn't have face guards back then. They wore leather shoes, not even sneakers. They have much inferior equipment then than they do now, I guess. So I had to do a lot of research on that as well to get it right. The helmet was leather as well. It was in plastic. So I had actual different original uniforms to copy from. As I mentioned, I had a model who was a football player pose in the uniform so I get the folds accurate and the movement accurate. He even told me how the football's held properly and everything. So I was just, I wanted to do as best job as I could to get it as accurate as possible.
My knowledge of this has been slowly growing over time, not realizing totally the full extent of the man's significance. And today is really valuable because it really just sort of in one day with all these speakers just sort of brings home all the aspects of his life. I mean, that's really the importance of today, just bringing it all together instead of learning the way I learned bits and pieces year after year being on Garrett Avenue. So I'm just really glad to be part of it. That was just a wonderful, wonderful day.
Throughout our country, it's important that we honor our heroes. George Washington, one of the founding fathers, is credited with a quote that is roughly, American youth today will serve if they see that their predecessors were honored appropriately. So I think it's important that as we tell young people that you should be productive members of your community, regardless of what type of society member you intend to be, a first responder, a military member, a local politician, a salesperson, anything, that you do that well, that you be a good member of your community. Well, when we honor someone who's done that, I think it's a good example for our youth when we tell them, if you do those things, you'll be remembered. We'll honor you for doing those things. You won't be forgotten.
That's what was some of the talk today was about, that being a good person is being a good person. We were at a luncheon today, and a lot of the people that knew him, there's definitely unfortunately a generation that's dying off, and a lot of those great stories, they didn't have the internet back then, they're getting lost. So if we honor him as we've honored him today, hopefully we can immortalize him, his great stories, his life's achievements, both on the field and off the field.
I guess the younger kids of the day, really don't know the athletes or the people of the past. I'll give a good example. I worked at the Springfield Sports Health Club Sports Club. And I asked a young kid one day, "Do you know who Dippy was?" He says, "Dippy? Who's Dippy?" I said, "Well, you ever heard of Wilt Chamberlain?" He said, "No." This kid's about 13 years old. Never heard of Wilt Chamberlain in this area? Unbelievable. The thing's around. And then I asked him again, I said, "Where you live?" He said, "Springfield." I said, "You know Paul Harrison?" He said, "Never heard of him." I said, "He lives right across the street from the club here." So that's the way things are going now. The young kids just don't understand. Unless we do things like this for them to understand of the past. Other than that, they're not going to know, believe me.
It definitely is something communities should be doing because it was just such a a great story, the way the story, reading passages from the book about how Villanova sort of reached out to him and helped him, and how he viewed himself as a football player, not a part of a racial subgroup. Our superintendent really brought in the educational aspects of his life. I think this is really, I mean, you have to pass this from generation to generation. That's how we know about these things.
I think we lose a lot about history. We forget about that. And I think in the social media age, you lose a lot of that. And this is something that hopefully we're able to bring this back. And I know speaking to a lot of people today, they're talking about, history, of bringing back the idea of history and teaching our kids about history and about heroes and about what true heroes are about. And this is something that hopefully kids will be taught a little bit more about. And it's something that I think we're real proud about. Hopefully that this is something we can launch to and be a stepping stone to bring kids to and having them learn a little bit more about Emlen and about what he was all about.